Hello and welcome to Action Women. This is a podcast for women ready to unleash their power and take real action towards their goals. I'm your host, Anthea McCourtie, and today I'm joined by my special guest, Renu Ballantyne. So Renu is a private chef, a director, and a diversity and inclusion champion. So welcome, Renu.
So nice to talk to you today, Anthea.
I'm very excited to chat with Renu because Renu has so many different layers, and I know that you've got so much that you can share with our listeners. So you didn't start off as a private chef from the offset. You have a great story, which I am going to get you to start off with. So what's kind of brought you to the point where you are now? Because you didn't start off as a private chef, did you?
No, I didn't. I started with a degree in engineering and economics quite some time ago. And I joined a very large oil and gas company down in Southampton. And my first ever job was wearing a boiler suit with a hard hat and steel-toe shoes,
I can't
working
picture
on a
that.
refinery. It wasn't a pleasant sight, especially when they were men's overalls.
Renu's very glamorous, just to put that in.
So I worked on the refinery for about 3 years, on and off on site versus an admin job. And it was a real introduction to the world of the corporate environment. And I jumped from there into a sugar refining company. So I worked for Tate & Lyle Sugars. Again, not so much on the shop floor, but very much in the production environment. So I was a production management accountant. And then the world of central London and consulting and client-based activities kind of drew me in. And I joined a really small niche consultancy firm. There were only 20 of us when I started. And I consulted in process re-engineering and business strategy redesign. We learned a new methodology and we'd share that with other corporate clients, and then we take them through a change program through business process re-engineering.
Yeah, God, that's quite the CV. So, which I just have to add in. When I invited Renu to guest on my podcast, I only knew sort of just part of the story, because what fascinates me with you, Renu, is that you are so action driven. And that starts to make sense when you're talking about your background, because those must have been very competitive environments that you were in.
Oh my gosh, yes. And competitive with being a woman in a STEM subject in a very male-dominated environment. I was one of 72 new joins at my scholarship program in British Aerospace that I did before I went to university. So there were 11 graduates and I was the one female.
Oh, wow.
And then when I started at Exxon Mobil, it was Esso at the time, it was about 7 or 8% women across the refinery. It's good news now, that number's gone up to 17%, and there's more senior women in management.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always like that. I've had interesting challenges where I haven't had bathrooms that I can visit, and I've had to drive to another piece of the refinery to go to the bathroom.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't have PPE that fitted me very well, because being the size that I am, it didn't fit around my face. Men's overalls, they weren't designed for me. So lots of challenges, but things have changed a little bit. So yes, after my career in consulting, I then moved to the US with my husband and his work, and I did my first bout of private chefing. So we lived in Miami, and I didn't want to work as an engineer over there. I didn't speak Spanish. So I took action, and I focused very much on what I wanted to do. And I worked really hard to get a visa to allow me to work out there, which wasn't.
I was going to say that must have been quite difficult.
It was challenging. And 9/11 had just happened as well.
Wow.
So I set up my business as well with defences from the residents in our building, and had to sort of overcome those.
Really?
So I joined an organisation called the Personal Chefs Network in the US.
Right.
And they supported me a great deal. And it was way before we used the internet, way before we had WhatsApp groups and Zooms. And so it was very letter-based. And I went on several training courses as well with them. So I had some amazing clients. I worked with in Miami.
So what were the objections then that you were receiving from?
So things like they didn't want clients coming to my home. So I was in a condo in an apartment building.
Okay, yeah.
So they didn't want external visitors coming, which was understandable.
Yeah.
Also, so licensing, if I was cooking in my own property, how that would work. So I didn't actually cook in my own property, which is different to now. I went to the client's home and cooked.
Yeah.
But I also did things like I offered cooking classes. There were various different nutritional diets that were very popular at the time.
Oh gosh,
So
I can imagine that the Atkins at that time must have been a big one.
It was massive.
Yeah.
And I had a client who asked me to calculate the 50 grams of carbs per day that she could have. I had another client who booked me for 10 weeks and wanted to learn to cook before she got married.
Oh, that's really lovely.
It was lovely.
Yeah.
We did everything. We learned risottos, we learned lots of American food, lots of braising, lots of brining, lots of rubs, barbecuing.
Oh, okay.
Really
My stomach's going to start rumbling soon.
Oh, you wait till you get to this this bit of my career. So that was really good fun. And then Abby and I came back to the UK. We had a daughter when we were out in America, so came back. And I worked back again in consulting in the UK. I had my second daughter. Every time one of my children is 3 months old, we've moved countries.
Oh, really?
So I've said to my husband, we're not having any more children.
You're quite happy in the UK.
And moving when they're 3 months old is quite tough as well.
Yes,
I
can imagine.
Yeah, so when the youngest was 3 months old, we moved to Qatar in the Middle East.
Wow.
And I wasn't really quite sure what I would do with my career at that time. I think within about 6 months, I knew I wasn't a stay-at-home corporate spouse type, mum. And I wanted to get back into work, and ExxonMobil invited me back to work for them, and I worked for them for another 13 years.
Oh, wow.
So yes, and it was at that time when I was in Qatar. I was also in Houston, and I was also here in the UK, so I got to move with the company. Not only did I do my work that was sort of engineering in the commercial field focused, but I started to champion inclusion and diversity.
Brilliant. So how was that? I can imagine there was a lot of work to be done.
Certainly, I think in a STEM environment, in a corporate company that has a very small number of women, we started as a community network to support each other. And we set that up in Qatar.
So was that something that you did amongst yourselves? Was that your sort of initiative to do that? Or was that something that the company had sort of proactively done?
A little bit of both. In the United States, there's a federal requirement for there to be diversity groups to support different ethnicities and different genders. Obviously, that's not the case in other countries, but we recognize that women in a work environment in Qatar had a very different experience than women in other countries. Yeah. Most of the women that worked for the company at ExxonMobil were expats, so they weren't local hires. But what we wanted to do was integrate as much as possible both the expat women and the local hires, and to share our knowledge. So we had lots of experience of things, and also we didn't have as much experience of what Qatari life was like being an expat. You're sort of somewhat segregated, and it was really nice to sort of share those experiences and knowledge. So we championed women, we celebrated women, we helped coach women, we mentored other women. So as a senior manager in the company at the time, it was a really good role because I felt I could really share back with younger, less experienced or different diverse women in our company.
That's amazing. And it's so good for sort of the new generation of women coming through to be able to have that support, because I find, I guess I've noticed sometimes in companies there is this mindset sometimes of, well, I had to deal with this and this, and it wasn't so easy for me. And sometimes you almost get that pulling the ladder up.
Yeah, there is not gender parity, there is not gender equality, and there is not gender equity in this country, in the UK, which is a fully developed country. Our stats for some things are much worse than countries that are still developing, and we should really take a look at ourselves. Yes. Yeah. So across the world, there's a gender pay gap report that comes out every year, and it's developed by McKinsey, but there's also a global gender parity report that comes out, and parity is one where men and women are equal. And in general, for health, for education, and for pay, for economics, women fall below parity. There are some areas where women do much better than men, and in certain countries women also perform much better than men, but those countries have had a genocide, so
Right,
there are fewer men around for there to be the existence. The UK is performing better, but I think since the introduction of the gender pay gap in 2018, where companies with over 50 employees have had to present their gender pay gap data, I think it's brought to light and it's allowed the conversation to happen.
That's so recent as well, 2018.
That's right. It's not been long since we've had the gender pay gap data available to us. As a result of the gender pay gap data, actually, when I was working here in the UK, I retired from ExxonMobil in 2021. But as a result of that data, it was clear that we still had some way to go. And it's hard to explain specifically what it is that's causing these issues of gender lack of parity. And some of that is what we call bias. Some is conscious bias, where we know, a woman may be pregnant, and that we know that there's going to be potential challenges for her return to work, despite her mindset. We've already created a sort of a story around what might be going on for her. That's a conscious bias. Whereas an unconscious bias may be that particular lady isn't selected to come back for a role because there's an unconscious knowledge that she may not have the time because she's got to run back home if something happens to the child. And that might not be in the forefront of someone's mind, but because someone's had an experience of that in the past, that experience is kind of driving their decisions. So I designed and developed a training along with the Women's Interest Network to coach both men and women, because both men and women have conscious and unconscious biases, and to coach them on what experiences women have in the workplace. We did that with a set of really good case studies and examples, and so we sent groups of 2 or 3 people off. One was the manager, one was the individual, and we put a scenario and we gave them, both of them, very limited information about the other person's situation. And we got them to have a conversation about the situation, applying for part-time work, telling someone that you're having a baby and you're going to take maternity, telling someone you can't come to a 7:30 in the morning meeting because it's just not practical, having to take your children to school. And all of those situations, obviously apart from the pregnant situation, could have been applicable to men. So men with families also experience challenges in their life and in their work life with the lack of understanding. And so this training went out to all the managers in the UK and was very well received.
That's an incredible achievement. You must feel very proud of that.
Really proud. And my husband still works for the company, now retired, and he talks about the training. So it's good that I've left a bit of a legacy.
That's incredible. So having 2 daughters, do you think that drives a lot of the work that you've done in that area, trying to create a more fair, not just workplace, but contributing to putting out a fairer society?
I think I've always wanted to be a role model to my girls, and I look at my mum, and she was a role model to me. My mum worked, and my mum was adaptable, and my mum overcame adversity and never gave herself the credit of that she did that. It just happened naturally. And so I think I get a lot of my personality traits from my mum. So I wanted to be a role model as well in today's society for my girls. And so one of the reasons I went back to work in 2009, when my youngest she was a year old, my oldest was 4 then, was because I had always been somebody who wanted to pursue a career. I spent a lot of money and a lot of time getting educated, and I wanted to put that to good use. And they also saw the better version of me when I was working, because I could use my brain. I felt active and energized and able to share my knowledge and able to kind of better myself. And when when I wasn't really able to do that in the same way that I wanted to do anymore, it was a good time for me to retire from the corporate world. I chose to retire in the February of 2021. I retired on the 7th of April 2021, and on the 27th of April 2021 I launched into a new career.
Fantastic. So talk to me about because you'd already done some private chefing
That's right.
in Miami. So has your background always been that cooking has been a passion of yours?
For sure. I think I can't recall the number of like dinner parties we've had or trial things that I'd make and have my friends come around and help me scrutinize it and make it better. I've been cooking since I can remember. My mum taught us how to.
I was going to ask
things.
if you were taught by your mum.
Yes, my mum never learned to cook because she had service help.
Do you know what, that makes me laugh, because my mum was exactly the same. She grew up in Guyana.
And she didn't learn to cook?
No, my dad had to teach, and my dad, Glaswegian, had to teach my mum how to cook.
Oh my goodness.
Because again, they had help. So my mum was self-taught.
Yeah, she came over to England in 1963, 63, and she would wait for my dad to come in from work to teach her how to peel potatoes. She loves telling us the stories. She tells my kids the stories all the time. And I think that's what grandparents are really good for, aren't they? They just share those stories. So and then she kind of like taught herself. And then of course at that time Indian food wasn't as available as it is now.
No.
You couldn't get coriander, you couldn't get cumin seeds.
Really?
Yeah.
Those are such staples in my cupboard.
And we didn't live in the hub of an Indian community. I grew up in the West Country near Bath.
Oh right.
So when you talk about inclusion and diversity, you talk about the only one. So one of the things is where you are in an environment and you're the only one that's different.
Yeah.
So if you're a woman in a STEM related corporate company and you're in a meeting and you're the only woman, you notice how you're treated differently than men quite often. And when you're the only one, it's much harder to progress.
Yeah.
I was the only one that was Asian at my school. My sisters went to a different school, and for a long time there were no other Asians at my school.
Oh my goodness.
So mum and dad, we lived in the West Country for dad's work, and when we would go back to London we would meet with all of our other friends and we would feel fully included, and we were all kind of the same. So I think I always noticed things that were different from a really early age. But so my mum then taught us how to cook, and then we would do we cooked every day at home. That was part of our routine, so it just came natural. I went to university, cooked a bit more, and then met and married my husband, and we cooked for each other. So yes, it's always been a huge passion. So it's
been a real part of your life. And I guess with that time with your mum, if you were all doing that together, there must be a real kind of nurturing aspect.
Sometimes she'd tell us to be more efficient and get it done faster. People coming through the door of the house was
I'm painting this idyllic picture here. So.
It was sometimes like that, but not always. But yeah, when there were 6 of us in the house, and we had my grandparents live with us as well, so cooking for 8 wasn't easy, and then clearing up for 8. So yeah, mum, and she worked as well. She worked until, I think I was in my mid-30s until she worked. So yeah, she worked for a long time.
Fantastic. So you've always cooked, even when you had this busy corporate career, you would come home and presumably cook things from scratch. And
yes. Cooking from scratch in Qatar was quite challenging. We lived there at a time when there was a very serious bird flu, and so we had no poultry, we had no eggs, fresh vegetables. Obviously Qatar doesn't grow anything. It's such a desert country, so everything was imported, and you had things coming from Australia, you had things coming from Belgium. So I'd say that my toughest time was in Qatar when we didn't have fresh fruit and vegetables. We then moved, we took a 17-hour flight, packed up our whole lives into like 4 suitcases, and then a container ship, which took 4 months to get to us. But when we moved to Houston, it was a Sunday morning, and we took the children shopping, and we went to a supermarket called Central Market. So it's a little bit like Selfridge's food hall,
right? Normal
prices, slightly higher prices, but slightly higher prices. But the array of fresh fruit and vegetables. Anita was 4. She was sat in the trolley, and I put 2 1-kilo boxes of raspberries and blueberries and strawberries each in the trolley. And before we got to the end of the shop, she'd eaten them all. She'd never tasted anything so amazing. And she still loves her fruit today. So then when we got to Houston, and I had this massive exposure of all these amazing, the Latin culture, of the Mexican culture, of the American culture, huge kind of like, and then the Creole culture as well in Louisiana. So a huge melting pot of different foods. We loved it.
Amazing.
And we flew over as well to the Napa Valley in San Francisco, and we spent some time over there. We had some friends in Miami, so we went back to Miami. We'd been to New York as well. So just exploring food in America was phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, I've got such food and travel envy right now. That just sounds incredible. So when you decided in April 2021, how did you go about doing? Because that's such a change in career, and I love that, because you've made your passion your profession now.
Yes, I have.
Because it's quite like you didn't take it so much as the side hustle, you kind of just went straight into it.
There are two things that helped me make the decision. One was, was I financially secure in order to do that? And I only could retire when I knew that we were financially secure.
And you'd had that incredible career.
Yeah, having worked for 25 years, the two of us working, it really gave us a solid kind of financial set of security. No one knew that COVID was going to happen, or that COVID was going on during that time. But and then the second was knowing that I'd been a private chef before, knowing a little bit about what that looked like, but this time knowing that I had to get the educational background to get the credibility. It's really competitive market.
Right.
I knew I didn't want to work in a restaurant because I've done that before, and that's really tough. I knew I didn't want to be a private client chef, i.e.
so you stuck with one,
stay with one client.
I say stuck with, right,
sometimes that's how it is. But no, because you're their life, you do everything they need you to do. They say jump, you say how high, they will go to Toronto, you've got to go with them. And I wanted to dedicate time to my family. So
that's not going to fit your lifestyle, is it?
Exactly. I always wanted to be here for the girls and for my husband, because they're my number one priority, and they always have been. And so whilst I was going through the process of taking the retirement, I started exploring training courses. And one company I started thinking about Le Cordon Bleu, but they felt very stuffy.
Right.
It was a little bit more creative and a little bit more up to date and modern. And I found Leith's School of Food and Wine, and the wine bit excited me. So I joined 2 cookery courses with them, both professional courses. The first was called Nutrition and Culinary Practice.
Fantastic. That's right up my street, as you know.
I know. So I learned all about nutrition, all about the nutrition of food, all about the different diseases that people have in relation to food. But more importantly, we learned how to cook to meet those needs. A lot of the time, you have fantastic nutritionists, you have fantastic chefs. This course brings both of them together. And it was a really inventive, creative class.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so one week they'd say, go away and find a high-fat food and reduce the fat by half, but make it taste amazing. So I designed a very low-fat mayonnaise that had no egg in it.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it tasted delicious.
We'll have to chat about that sometime.
And then another time they said, design a main course that's vegan, that has over 25 grams of protein in it.
Nice.
And that's quite hard, so you have to so I had a lot of digital tools that I've used, and so that's really the mainstay of my nutritional piece that I do, is that I have the right software that will help me calculate macros.
That makes a big difference.
And micronutrients. So sometimes we focus on the protein, carbs and fat, which is what a macro is, but we don't focus on the micronutrients, because people often think that they have to exclude something to lose weight. But we talk about a nutritionally balanced program of food, which is balanced for the macronutrients, but also balanced for the micronutrients. You may end up cutting out something like milk from your diet, and then you're really deficient in calcium. You've got to think of the alternatives to bring back into your diet that are going to bring those calcium intakes.
Absolutely. I know in nutritional therapy, it's, we kind of almost have this rule that you don't take something out unless you know what's going to replace any potential nutrients that are going to be
deficit. And so the tool really helps me. So during that cookery class, not only did we have to cook every week, I had to invent something every week. We had theory to study every week. We also had a quite an intense project where we designed a meal plan for a particular client. So we went out and we looked for a client. My client was very, very tired, skipping meals, replacing coffee for meals, drinking a little bit too much alcohol, not sleeping, and therefore not having an awful lot of energy and having lots of confusion, which
that sounds like a lot of clients I see.
Who is in their, I don't know, mid-20s to mid-50s is going to feel like that at some point. And for this particular client, what they hadn't recognized was that their insulin levels were probably all over the place because they were using coffee to replace food. They were grabbing a high-fat, highly processed lunch like a Pret sandwich for lunch, coming home, grabbing some fruit, grabbing some crisps, having a dinner, and then feeling still hungry after dinner, and then thinking, oh, I've got to have something healthy, I'll have some porridge, which I just couldn't understand why the porridge wasn't being eaten in the morning, for, you know, to help them get their sugar levels and actually break that fast that you had overnight. And the client was also drinking too much alcohol, you know, without realizing it. Initially, the client was adamant they didn't want to change too much. Over time, and then we did a meal plan, we calculated all the macros. They weren't getting enough fiber as well, so 30 grams of fiber a day is key, and that's, you know, I find it hard to get that. I mean, I've just had kale with the whole wheat pasta for lunch, and I know that I still won't get my 30 grams today. It's quite hard to get it in. It's been 2 years now since the client has had the meal plan. They will regularly wake up and have a banana, linseed, and oat milk milkshake with strawberries, a smoothie for breakfast. Right. They are on decaf coffee only. Right. They've cut their alcohol intake down, but then if they want to go out and it's a special night, that won't stop them. They've understood that all protein doesn't need to come from meat and fish. So they understand what protein can come from chickpeas, from lentils, from mushrooms, from tofu. So they've introduced different proteins into their diet.
Sometimes variety is so key for people. Well, people get trapped in a cycle of the same kind of foods. Yes. And sometimes it's just so exciting for them once you actually start to open their eyes and open their palate to different things, isn't it? And this particular client had, their job is in mergers and acquisitions, and they spend a lot of time entertaining, and they're entertained a lot as well. And as a result, you know, if you're going to a nice restaurant, why wouldn't you have foie gras? You know, why wouldn't you have a gorgeous, lovely steak? But actually their choices that they make now, because they know about the impact. So we also learned a lot about the science of cholesterol and the science of saturated fat and how that what that does in your body. And so coaching them on a little bit of that also kind of opened their eyes. They'd never done any biology in their past life, and so didn't know the science of how food works. And that knowledge is so empowering, because I've had clients, you know, in that similar sort of job role, and you know, I've had some real initial reluctance at first, and you know, I very much changed the way in which I work with my clients now, when we sort of introduce gradual changes. But what was really refreshing to see with him is that he did change the choices that he was making. And I think probably things are different now, even in the last few years, but the pressure, especially being male, to drink alcohol all the time in those environments. So there's still quite a sort of macho association with having a drink, and he was so adamant to start that, you know, he couldn't not but things change, and it's nice to see that. And you've got to have the courage in yourself to say, I choose not to do this for my health. People don't feel like they have the choice, but actually if you give them knowledge, and that knowledge that makes them feel a certain way, it's empowering. And it's just that sense of empowerment is really what I'm all about. So that really kind of speaks my language. So the course was amazing. I learned so much. I met a wonderful group of people, 2 of whom I still work with. Fantastic. And then that took me to my second course. So in between the 2 courses, I set up my business.
I got all my food safety hygiene ratings, got all my insurances and everything.
Brilliant.
Had so much fun designing my logo. Oh, I knew I wanted it to be a lovely color that was reflective of the health and nutrients, but then I knew also I needed to promote the right kind of style of my food.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, that was fun. And then I had to learn how to write and design a website, something I'd never done in my life before. So, and I was 51 at the time. So
Incredible.
Doing all of this at that age was scary, but also really invigorating.
I love that.
And I think that I'm the type of person that if I'm not learning new things, I don't get bored easily, because I can quite easily sit down and do nothing for a day. But I feel like I'm not progressing. Yeah, I want that for me.
I understand that. I'm very much on that same wavelength. I mean, and I love that you've been able to change the career, because I know even amongst some friends, I think people can feel like stuck in their careers. And I mean, I had a change of career when, I mean, I guess my situation was slightly different. I went to Manchester Uni straight after school, did a economics degree, realised halfway through, God, for me, economics is boring. So I did a development economics degree. Few things kind of went on, but I had a complete confidence crisis, was sort of in sales, ended up sort of temping, doing recruitment whilst I decided what I wanted to do. And that was like a few years. And then I thought I had a choice between either going to acting school or studying nutrition. And then, you know, I went down the nutrition route. So it was quite a slow process, and it could get a bit disheartening at times, because my friends had gone into their career and really kind of progressed.
Yes.
But even though they've got to a level that's kind of much further than where I am in terms of probably status and finances, I still love that freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have big plans that I'm working on, but I love the freedom of just, you decide your brand, you decide what you're about, what you want to promote. How have you found it being part of such large organizations in the past?
Yes.
To being your brand and being your company? Do you have you found surprisingly similar challenges? Have you found different challenges?
It's a great question. I think when you've been in an environment where you're a square block trying to fit into a round hole, and that you're constantly being reshaped to become that round peg to fit in that hole, I stopped being me. And the way I was talking, I got that impression through doing the training on the inclusion and diversity training, because for that kind of thing, you should just have the freedom to say it how it is. But I was even vetting myself from saying how it was because of the people that were in the room. Right. I was often a senior person in the room. There was often people much more senior than me. I found that I had some fantastic male allies who I would always make sure there were some male allies in the room when we were doing that training. And when you're working in an environment where you can't be you anymore, you're no longer included for your diversity. Your diversity is the issue. Right. And diversity doesn't mean gender diversity or race diversity or anything. It's the diversity in thought. It's the diversity in speaking. It's nobody has had a background like me in the company. But then nobody has had a background like anyone else. But we were all trying to be molded and shaped. And the words were coming out saying, we all need to include diversity, but the reality was it was very hard to do that. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I've never thought of it like that before. That you are trying to be shaped into, and you must lose part of yourself. When someone says you're not a cultural fit, oh gosh, that is another way of saying you don't fit the mold, and you're different to us, and therefore it doesn't work. And that's the opposite of inclusion. Are companies actually allowed to say that now? Well, people are getting more and more sensitive about how they use language. lots of companies still talk about cultural fit, and so
Yeah.
that's how people recruit. You recruit to
Yes.
fit with the culture. There's lots of work being done. I'm not going to diss anybody, because I think the amount of work that's done is amazing.
Yeah.
The reality is that the train is such a big train, and it's so hard to change its direction
Yeah.
quickly. But you know, there's been massive losses of women in work through COVID. The biggest sufferer as a result of COVID in the workplace has been the workplace, because more and more women have lost their jobs, because that's
Yeah.
the first place people cut back on. People who are temps, people who are lower paid,
Yeah.
people who have domestic challenges.
Yes.
They're the ones that are let go, or they're the ones that are, you know, don't have the jobs to go back to. So I think your question was, for me, was around how did I, you know, how does my brand and how do I feel about being an individual now instead of being in a corporate. I'm just full of energy, and I'm excited, and I get an idea in my head, and there's nothing that's going to stop me.
I was going to say that's the exciting thing, isn't it? You've got nobody to dismiss the idea or try to completely change it.
It's my idea, and I can go with it. So when
no one else is going to take credit for it.
But it's not, I mean, it's not even that. It's just when you're in an environment where you have to work within the remit, the boundaries of a process, and that process is there for safety reasons, you know, for regulatory reasons, for financial reasons. Those processes are all there because they need to be, because somebody did something in the past. When you don't have those boundaries as a small business owner, you can allow yourself, because I get present to thought. So I'll get an idea, and then something will go, oh my God, that's just, don't do another thing, Renu, stop. And then I'll go, no, just let me think about what it could be. And that idea will just go, and I can feel myself getting present to the idea, and it will just carry on to, and then in conclusion, I'll either go, yeah, that's a really good idea, or I'll go, okay, I realize that's probably too much for me to take on, but I've allowed myself to be present to think through the idea. When I was in a corporate environment, the boundaries of all of the regulations and the processes and the rules prevented me from being creative. And I feel so creative at the moment. But I mean, not just reflecting in my food, but just how I present myself, how I present my brand. Even doing Instagram and Reels is allowing me to be creative. So
that's brilliant.
It's good.
And you're very supportive of other women, other small businesses in your area, in the networking groups. Is that something that you found really helpful as you're growing a business?
Oh my goodness, yes. So a lady introduced me to a couple of the networks in the local area here. And she could see that, I mean, I was starting out my journey. This is in July 21, so it's before I had a single customer. She said, you've got to join. And I'd never been part of these social networks before. When you're in a corporate organization, you're in the networking within the company. There are lots of other like-minded people like you. You go to events, you do things, you know their status, they know your status. You're able to kind of like have that conversation within the remits of the rules that you're allowed to talk. So not knowing how to behave in these social networks, I actually just watched for 6 months.
Oh, wow. So
for the first 6 months, I just looked at what was going on and how people would interact. And I was really lucky because I was exposed to a particular network that was very, very positive. That constantly supported other networks, other businesses.
That's great.
And so once I knew what type of support you could get from these social networks and business networks, I joined a few others. But I then realized also that not everyone, not everyone's going to have a dinner party for 8 people and want to do 5 courses, because that's not their thing. And so that's when my creative sort of hat came on. And I remember sitting, I think it was like the 4th or the 5th of January. Everyone was talking about transformation. Everyone was talking about, and I came up with the idea of a Friday night health away. And I just said to my husband, why wouldn't I do this? And before I make a decision on doing something like that, I will always do the commercials. So I sat down and I worked out how many customers I needed for this to be successful. and I worked out how much I should spend on food, and I worked out, you know, I had to buy packaging, I had to buy, so all of these upfront costs were going to be quite big. And so I knew I needed to run this program for 3 months. And as a result, I was able to start other new things. Like I did a pop-up at a cafe with Indian street food, which I'd never done before. I was in someone else's restaurant cooking my food.
Fantastic.
And just, so I've really enjoyed being creative.
Yeah, because you've got different sort of aspects. You've got the private chef and dinner parties, you've got the health away. You're right. Take a moment. Okay, so you're doing a lot of different things. You've got the private dinner parties, you've got the private chefing, you've got the health away, you've got the pop-ups. So that must be really nice to be able to be as creative as you like with those different areas. And going back to the idea of moving from that sort of corporate side to the small business, are there any challenges that you find that are quite similar in the small business world?
I mean, yes, I definitely, there's a lot of in terms of things that are not so good for small businesses. Everyone's competing with each other, and there's lots of different people in the same space that I'm in. The difference that I found between corporate and small businesses is that small businesses support each other regardless if they're competitors or not. So there's lots of work that I might not be able to do, but that I get asked about, that I pass on to my direct competitors. And I don't mind doing that at all.
Well, we all have our sort of niche as well, don't we?
We do. And the other thing that has been really good is learning how to collaborate with others, which I know is something that you're big on at the minute.
Yes, I love a good collaboration.
And I think having collaborated in the corporate space where you have similar knowledge but don't know the answer to something, and you go out and reach and you find an expert, and then you both pool your resources together and end up having a better product for the customer. I found some really good collaborations that I can do with other small business networks as well. So collaborating with Anthea, PT, and we've designed a brand called Workout. And so we're doing different things in that space, which has been amazing.
Brilliant.
I've been collaborating with some yoga instructors, and they run a yoga day retreat or a weekend retreat, and I've invited me along to chef for the day, for the whole day. Yes, and I'm staying in a glamping tent, which I've never done before. So new experiences for all of us. Hope I'll just be able to sleep well enough so I can cook the next day. So it's really nice collaborating. So those things I've definitely brought across. And then obviously just the knowledge of how to be with people. I think in my world and in my work, I need to sometimes draw out of people more information than they're giving, especially when I do the meal plans. So I'm working with a client actually next week, and he's just had a kind of like a whole body analysis, and they've come back and said I've got really high cholesterol. This is a very fit, healthy person who works out, who generally eats well, but their cholesterol is dangerous, and they want to use food and nutrition as another method as well as medication of helping to get that under control. And so doing the meal plans, it's important to kind of try and extract information from people, because if you're putting together a meal plan and that person, that's what they're going to be eating, and food is a big part for them, you can't put things on there that they don't want to eat. It's got to be focused on what they're interested in and their tastes. And so I've taken a lot of my learnings about people skills and reading body language and understanding the intonation in someone's voice to know whether or not what they're actually saying is what they actually mean. So for me, a meal plan is such an emotive sort of transformation for anyone is, and it's such an emotive part of that journey.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, people need to feel that they're heard and understood. And
yes,
I think that's a great aspect to look at for people who are wanting to break out of that corporate world and pursue their passion, to really hone in on those transferable skills, because they may, engineering to chefing, okay, there are some things that might be obvious parallels, but in other aspects you might think, well, they're really quite different. But when you actually really look at it, there's loads of transferable skills.
Lots of transferable skills, I think. And also, a lot of times I wish I could have done this 20 years ago. I'd have been so much happier. 20 years ago, I don't think I'd have been the same me, and been able to try the things that I've tried, because you've got to make mistakes to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So far, everything has worked out really well. A few things haven't gone as well as I'd like to have gone.
Everything's information,
Exactly.
So it gives us feedback, and I have to remind myself of this a lot, because I can really fall into the trap of beating myself up about things, and I kind of think, oh, I wish that had been about it. No, this has brought me to where I am now. I've learned from things. I wouldn't be doing this now if X, Y, and Z hadn't happened.
And you make a really good point, because in the corporate world, someone else defines what success is for you. When you are a small business owner, you define success. And I always meet my targets. I always meet my goals, because I know what I'm capable of. I know I push myself, but I also know I don't want to beat myself up for not doing better than I can do. Because that's what happens in corporate. You're competing with other people. It's a straight line up and down. Someone's at the top, someone's at the bottom. It doesn't matter how hard you work, and if you're at the top, someone's going to try and always be there to be at the top with you. So, but someone else is defining success.
It's totally different when you're setting those goals for yourself. I never fit into the corporate environment, even though that's what I went into. I never fit in because I wasn't doing what I was passionate about. And I would literally sit there in meetings just sort of looking around me, and I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, you guys really give a shit about this. I'm just sitting here just because I have to be here. And I would actually think, gosh, there's people that really want to sort of push through it. I don't want to be here. And I had that for years, and I just kind of thought, well, that's maybe just me. And then totally different ball game to actually.
It takes a lot of courage to analyze whether something is working for yourself or not. And not everyone has the ability and the courage to do that.
And some people don't want to.
Exactly. And then there's a lot of courage to jump ship, because that not everyone has financial security. So it's not right for everybody. Just because they're not the happiest they could possibly be in the job that they're in right now, it doesn't mean to say you should leave and do something else, because being a small business owner is a 24-hour a day job. It's It's not 9 to 5.
No,
you can't switch off when you get home.
And your mind doesn't switch off. You're always thinking, even if it's like in a positive way of like, oh, that could work, or maybe I should try this. Or it's something like, oh gosh, did I send that to, it never switches off.
And then you've got to do your accounts, and then you've got to keep up with regulation, and then you can get a last minute health inspector visit like I did yesterday. And you have to, there's so much you have to be on it. You have to be an accountant, you have to be a marketer, you have to be a website developer.
You've got to be all the different roles, don't you?
And you can't be good at all of them.
No.
And it doesn't matter where you set your standards. You then you say, well, what do I buy in? What is it that I know I cannot do?
And what can you leverage and what can you outsource?
Exactly.
So coming back to all the fantastic work that you did in terms of diversion and inclusion, what have you found going from the corporate world to small business? Do you still find that there are issues there?
I wouldn't say that I would find that there are issues. I'd say that people don't have the same level of awareness. It's obviously I was studying it for a long time. It was like I did a separate degree, as it were, learning all about the different kinds of biases. And when you're a trainer and you're training other people, you're the coach. You have to be the expert. You have to have all the numbers and all the stats at your fingertips. So the team and I would do lots and lots of research. We'd have lots of information in our background, so we were knowledgeable. When you go into society today, society in itself isn't really knowledgeable, I would say, on diversity and what it means to include diversity. And so diversity isn't just like I mentioned before, race or gender, it's also diversity of thought. And at this year's International Women's Day, which was yesterday, Wednesday, by the way, March the 8th, it's every year. It's been going since the 1970s. Did you know that?
No.
International Women's Day has been around since 1970.
I legitimately thought it was like a social media creation.
It's been around for such long. It's a global day. In countries like Qatar, people reward women on that day. I think in Thailand, I think in some of the Southeast Asian countries, men bring home flowers for their women on International Women's Day. They have celebrations for women in the workforce in lots of different countries. In the UK, I don't understand why we don't do that as much.
You might get occasional hashtags.
Or a cupcake, a diversity group has done that. But so I think that there just isn't the awareness, because we haven't really been in a situation where we've been dinged for it. I think big organizations are getting better at understanding, because they've had to do the gender pay gap, and there is talk of having a race pay gap at some point.
Interesting.
And so I think that will bring forward statistics that will show that even though we think we're being equitable and fair, that inherently or unconsciously the result is that it's not. And I think in small businesses, you're not really impacted, because you don't have big teams. So they say that the more diverse a team is, the better the productivity and performance. So, and that diversity could come from, a male, a female, a bisexual person, somebody with a disability, somebody that's trained in a Montessori school. So you've got a diversity of people and a diversity of thought. The productivity of that team is known, and through all the psychological and theoretical analysis, to outperform teams that are the same. And so you look at all the big corporate companies that are more successful, they're really diverse. Apple, Google, all of these companies have huge diversity of people. So in a small business, you don't have the diversity, so your performance could be impacted as a result. But you don't know any different. And so if you don't know any different, then you're not going to think about it. I would say that if you're a small business today, you could think about inclusion of diversity by saying, have I got a diverse workforce? Did I recruit in a diverse way? So we all have the ability to say we want to hire more people. Am I fair in my hiring process? One of the most obvious forms of bias is called the like me bias. Everything I do because it's like someone else does it, or this person is like me, so therefore I can talk to them more easily. You have brown eyes, I have brown eyes. We don't look the same, but we both have brown eyes. We may inadvertently, unconsciously do something that's similar, and so therefore I think, I'm going to get on with this person. They've got brown eyes. The like me bias is the most obvious, where you see lots and lots of the same types of people in a corporate company, and you have these big companies that are like that, big Texan companies, or big Norwegian companies, or big American companies. And so the like me bias is an unconscious one. We don't know it, but we're unconsciously drawn to other people who are just like us. And so we just need to stop and think and come back and say, did I recruit that person because they were going to work in exactly the way that I work? And so therefore it's easier for me to offload some work onto them. Or should I have recruited someone else who is really different than me, but the outcome might be that my business is more successful because they're going to do things in a better or a more efficient way than me?
That's a really interesting perspective, because I think so many people will, at worst, kind of think of diversity and inclusion as a box ticking exercise, or something that they need to do to avoid, getting penalized. But actually just realizing, if you are just a profit driven person, that actually it could improve the success of your business. It's an interesting perspective.
All of the research says the more diverse the group of people are, the higher the performance of that team. And the other thing I'd say is to just be careful. As a small business, we're constantly putting stuff out there. Think about when you say, yay to all the successful women in the world.
Yeah.
We need to yay all the successful men, and then we need to yay all the other forms of gender diversity, because there are more than men and women in this world. Lots of people recognize themselves as something different, and we are inadvertently excluding those people by saying men and women or just women. So we need to be conscious of the fact that there are people who characterize and recognize themselves as different than a gender, and they're gender neutral, or they're gender fluent. We need to recognize that there are people that are older and the people that are younger. We need to look at the language we might use when we're putting an advert out, and not inadvertently discriminate against older people by saying, I'm looking for a young, fit, creative person. Or we need to inadvertently not discriminate against younger people by saying, I'm looking for an experienced 25 years plus type of person. You know, we can inadvertently exclude people if we're consciously thinking about including them.
And because we're not in a corporation, because we're not working to particular policies, you don't get pulled up on that. Whereas you have to kind of take ownership and take responsibility. So I think that's really something that I think a lot of us could start to think more about and be more aware of. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention? We've gone through so many different areas. I knew we would have a good chat and go through a whole range of things. Is there an action that you would, or anything that you want our listeners to take away?
I'd say that there is no harm at all in following your passion, but do it under controlled circumstances. Make sure that it makes commercial sense to do it. Don't launch into something that won't pay the bills. I mean, that's irresponsible. So be responsible. And if you are passionate about something, you've got the financial security, or what you're going to do is going to bring in the money you need, then allow yourself to be creative. Really get present to an idea. Like, I hadn't realized how much fun it is generating ideas and converting them into a reality. So that's the other thing. So if you have loads of ideas, convert them into something. I
love that. That is what I'm taking away today. I love that turn of phrase, being present to the idea.
Being present to the idea.
I love that.
Because the idea comes into your head and then it stops quite often. Allow yourself to be present to develop that idea until you can understand how that idea is going to actually work.
I love that.
That's kind of, and I get into a meditative state sometimes.
I was going to say, that's almost like I can vision myself sort of like, oh, I've got an idea, and literally just sitting down, just going with it. It is, you
get into like a trance where it's just kind of developing into this, and I'm almost having an internal conversation with myself. These are the pros, these are the cons. And then I'm a writer. I have to write it all down. So I've got all these bits of paper, I scribble all over them, and then I'll cross things out. And then I know that idea will work into something.
Fantastic.
So brilliant. So follow your passions. It's worth it.
Oh, thank you so much. Renu, how can people get in contact with you? We'll pop your contact details in the show notes. Anything in particular that you want to
So we haven't talked at all about my food. So if you want to see pictures of the amazing food,
I've just been so fascinated by you and your journey.
I'm happy to share. So if you wanted to see some pictures of my food, or even taste some of my food, my Facebook page is @Chef Renu B, and my website is www.chefrenub.com. And it's just me, Renu Valentine. You can get in touch via WhatsApp or via Messenger. And I hope to be able to cook some gorgeous food. I know I've cooked.
I was going to say, I can testify. I had the most incredible Valentine's Day meal, which was just incredible. It was top-notch food, obviously, with such clear instructions on how to prepare it, how to make it look good. It really was just fabulous. So check out what Renu can do and get in contact. So thank you so much, and I look forward to finding out more about you, because I'm absolutely fascinated. I love people with a good story. So thank you for listening, guys. Remember to take care and take action.